You're listening to WKDW Radio 97.5 and KDWRadio.com, broadcasting from the Bishop West Real Estate Mobile Tower right here in Northport, Florida in 2024. I've got a very, very special guest and a lot happening down at C.A.R.E. But Joan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about you? Thank you for having
Not,
me.
yeah, absolutely. So, real quick, just because it's been a couple months now, several times, just give an overview of who you are in your position, and then we'll go right into what's happening at C.A.R.E.
Okay, thank you. Well, my name is Joan Derrig-Heacox, and I work for C.A.R.E, Center for Abuse and Rape Emergencies. We serve Charlotte County victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. We provide hospital response. We provide victim services. We work with legal agencies to support clients if they decide to press charges. Um, and we have a domestic violence shelter, but most importantly, or very importantly, we have a 24/7, 365 call line. It's our hotline and our helpline. And we are always there waiting to help you or help anyone that is suffering or has issues with domestic violence and sexual assault.
Fantastic.
And
So,
we have a huge, a full crew of volunteers, and we're always looking for a few more volunteers to help us serve our clients.
and there is a value to volunteering. Um,
Yes.
can you kind of talk about really quick because I know we have a full schedule. Can you talk about what it takes to be a volunteer and how many hours a month that is required?
Okay, so we have two levels, if you can, two types of volunteers. We have the non-direct service volunteers. They're the ones that run errands for us, go shopping. They will help us with maintenance, fixer-upper projects, go to outreach events, participate in parades and fun things like that, and be a presence in our community in that way. And then we have advocates. Our volunteer advocates go through an extensive bit of training. They go through 30 hours of core training to work with domestic violence victims, and they go through 30 hours of training for SV or sexual violence victims, and an additional hotline training. So those our volunteer advocates help us cover the hotlines. They help us. They go to the hospital and work with law enforcement to help clients that have experienced domestic violence. They help us do outreaches, and they're just, they're that extra set of hands that help us when we're working with clients and decorate the center so it looks Christmassy and show up for parades and just answer the hotlines. They are so wonderful. So I have about 12 or 13 and of close to 20 total volunteers, but I'm always looking for a few more.
Nice. And we never have, no matter what we do, because even at the radio station, we're all volunteer. We never have enough volunteers.
That's correct.
We
But
have great,
working with
we both
clients,
have great volunteers, but we never have enough of the great volunteers, do we?
right. Well, it takes a certain type of person to work with volunteers that have gone through a lot of trauma. Often we get people that have had that trauma that want to volunteer, but it's sometimes a little too close for them and emotional. So we recommend that they either not work with clients or go find something really fun to do. If you've gone through domestic violence, sexual assault, and you've done a lot of therapy and work on it, go find. I always recommend go find something really fun to do. You've already done the hard work, and
Absolutely.
I do suggest that. And some people have been at it for a long time and they're not triggered by the situation, so they work with us as well.
Awesome. So I'm kind of gonna jump right into what is really happening on January 18th and why it's so important that people should really open up their morning and come down. Uh, can you talk about the human trafficking? I can't say it today. Human trafficking
event.
Human Trafficking Symposium. My goodness.
That's a
Uh,
lot, right?
that was a
So
lot.
January,
I thought it was, but January 18th.
yes, January 18th from 9 to 12 noon. January is Human Trafficking Awareness Month, which is why we're holding it. We are not a certified center, but we do work with clients and we do help them with referrals and getting them the help that they need. So we hold this this human trafficking symposium, and you, John, are going to be our MC for the day. And we're super excited about having you on board as our MC. We're going to have a U.S. attorney there. We don't have the name yet because the one that was scheduled had to cancel. And so we're replacing that person, but we will have speakers who have gone through trafficking and who have come out of it and can share with us their stories. We're going to have a lot of vendors there. We'll have a lot of students, nursing students and college students. So the more people we can share this information. So if you're in class in college, ask your teachers if you can come to our human trafficking event. You will learn a lot.
Well,
It's often something people don't even, it's, in plain sight. It's
well,
in plain sight.
talk about. I want to go back a year because there is some value about talking about last year's event in preparation for this year's event. There was some really cool reactions last year from some of the students that attended, and even some of the survivors that were there. Can you kind of highlight that whole emotional roller coaster that happens at this symposium?
Well, it can be an emotional roller coaster for some people. And you're referring to some of the students that had attended, college level students that were there. And I believe that some of them were even nursing students and men. So we must not ever forget that men are also trafficked, not just women, because most of them are boys and girls. And in some cases, many of us know someone, or when we hear the story, all of a sudden it's like bells go and whistles go off, and we think, oh my gosh, we wonder what happened. But some people stood up at the last event and shared their story with us right out of the audience, in addition to, our speakers sharing their story. But we're there to help you too. So if something does come up, you're always free to call us. And we always have an advocate online that can take crisis counseling over the phone, or we can schedule an appointment for you. For you, that might have been unusual, but things like that happen for us when we do outreaches all the time. It doesn't
And
matter if we're in a
yeah,
park or at an event with a table set up. People come up to us quite often and share their stories and become very emotional. And that's why
and
we're there.
and that was cool because I had that was my first time attending. And not only
Hmm.
was it my first time attending, but was my first time being on stage, being able to engage with the crowd and then go back and mix and mingle with them and ask questions at the end. And what I found was it's not necessarily emotionally draining for people. It is there is so much good information for the everyday person to gain knowledge and protection from the outside elements that we don't think about on a daily basis. And I found that the insight that was provided by law enforcement, by the survivors that did get up there and speak, and then the reaction from the crowd and the students, being able to share that emotion from one an appreciation standpoint, but then also some memories that had been brought up, and that engaging moment that they had, it changed that symposium from a a moment of what's going on And do I really need this information to there's a lot of valuable information I've got to carry around and talk about. And we've literally been talking about it for a year. And I know that I have had this conversation over and over again with people about attending and being part of it because there is from I would say a young age, a son or daughter. There's some really astute presentations and information that is given in a completely different manner than the norm because you're attaching some of that emotion and factual experience to it. And I don't want to talk about others and what they've been through. Like you've always said, we don't like to talk about the victims, but what they're willing to share is invaluable um, to the everyday person. And that's kind of what I want you to highlight is the information that is generated from this symposium in such a short period of time. It's only 3 hours, but there really is so much information compact in.
Yes. I just want to say really quickly, it's not that I don't want to talk about the victims, is that we respect the confidentiality of the victims. And Charlotte County, Port Charlotte, I mean, this whole area is a very small community. So even details that seem bland or nondescript may in fact reveal the identity of someone, especially in such a
Certainly.
small, close-knit community. So it's not that I don't want to talk about them. I want to honor confidentiality, and that's really important for their safety.
Well,
And it's a
and
promise that we give them.
that
So
goes
that
along with
being
the
said,
it goes in with the respect of the symposium.
yes,
And when they talk, they have that same respect.
yes. And if someone wants to share their story, that's
Sure.
every right. That's a different situation versus me talking about somebody that might reveal an identity. So what I think was really powerful now that we're talking about this is most people think human trafficking takes place over in some other part of the world, some third world country, someplace not here, over there. However, when we heard them talking, we realized human trafficking isn't over there. Human trafficking is here. It's in our county, it's in our state, it's in our backyards, it's in our neighborhoods, it's in our businesses. And so the reality of that conversation last year is that it's not over there. It's not somebody else's problem. It's, foreigners that are doing this to people. It is us, it is the United States, it is Americans, it is Americans doing it to Americans, it's Americans doing it to vulnerable adults, vulnerable, especially vulnerable children. So human trafficking is, we kind of divide it into two parts: sex trafficking and labor trafficking. And trafficking does not have anything to do with, we think of crossing state lines or borders or, international borders. It has nothing to do with crossing borders because that's doesn't matter, or the transportation. Sometimes people are transported across borders, but primarily it has to do with forcing somebody to participate in activities such as sex or labor practices by force, by fraud, and by coercion. And coercion is really, really important for us to grasp the concept of, because girls, women, and boys are coerced, forced into doing it because of the consequences of if they don't. So I might agree to have sex so that you don't kill me. That's coercion, right? That's not consent. That's coercion. And the state of Florida doesn't have as many clear-cut laws about that. Other states are getting clear laws on differentiating between what is coercion and what is consent. And the reason I'm talking about this is because a great deal of sexual trafficking, sex trafficking, has to do with coercion, and has to do with fraud, and has to do with fear and force. So girls have been forced into sexual trafficking because they're coerced into it.
And,
For
and
example,
go ahead.
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that in past conversations we talked about the fact that human trafficking can stay local. It doesn't have to go overseas. It doesn't have to go to another state. It can actually be in your backyard, literally in your backyard or somebody else's backyard behind you happening. And there's a lot of truth to that, and there's a lot of cautions that people can pay attention to. Can you talk about how we are in Florida? We're kind of susceptible to human trafficking at another level because of the transient behaviors that we have here of all the visitation, and all the escape routes, to get out and quickly too. But
That's
on top
correct.
of that, there's a lot of pressure on the younger generation now with social media and all of the I'm going to let everyone know if you don't do this kind of thing. Can you? I know this is one of your hot topics, so I'm going to kind of let you take it and run with it, but incorporate that side of it into how this symposium addresses that.
So we're going to probably focus a lot. I'm not on the planners of this myself personally. I will be there and participating in it. Um, so one of the biggest things about human trafficking is that Florida is in the top three. Florida and Tennessee, and I forgot who the third one was. Could be Texas, could be Ohio. Ohio used to be because of Route 80 that goes east and west across the country, and 75 that goes up and down. So it was a huge place for human trafficking, but right now Florida is in the top three. So sex trafficking and labor trafficking. Sex trafficking is something that's interestingly become a huge business, actually bigger than drugs, because with drugs you can prosecute. Somebody has a kilo of drugs, and you can tell that that's they're selling drugs, and they're making a lot of money. But they found out with human trafficking, sex trafficking, their commodity is a boy or a girl, a child. And a child isn't speaking. They're not telling. They have been coerced, threatened, feared, so they're not telling. It is a better way of earning an income. So interestingly enough, sex trafficking makes a huge amount of money. I just happen to have a number because I was yeah, there we go. First worst states for human trafficking: California, Texas, Florida. And I'm not sure when these results were, but Ohio is up there, Georgia, all again because of our location and the idea that that's
That was 20. That was
2023.
23.
Mm-hmm. So I just had a little note because I was watching a program that they figured out Texas had 79,000 kids involved in sex trafficking daily. That's close to 80,000 children involved in sex trafficking daily. And this was a number of years ago. And they said 234,000 in labor trafficking. That in San Diego alone, it's $810 million profit. The profit from trafficking, sex trafficking, it's more profitable than drugs, and you don't get charged with crimes. It's easier to get away with.
Oh, and
So
it's
that is
it's
really super important.
it's kind of ironic too that the two big states, Texas and California, and this has no true direct correlation because I'm sure these numbers are not connected in two, but we've got the border situation where California and both Texas get a lot of this, and these numbers are I've got to believe that they're not in representation of all the people on the borders who are coming across, because that's undocumented, a lot of it, because we cannot even track that, and whether people would even tell the truth at that point, because they want to come here so bad, they don't want to ruin any chance of being in America. um, so I don't even think these numbers are even accurate when it comes to a true picture of what's happening in those two states coming into the United States through illegal crossings.
Yes, I agree.
So, and we're talking about numbers that blow people away, and these are true numbers of citizens having these interactions, let alone other people. And yet, I will go right back to this because of the things that you've said over the last few years. These numbers are still not accurate because people do not, they're not saying that they're part of it.
Well, and it requires also self-identification, right? Somebody has to self-identify that they are being trafficked.
Right.
And with the case, again, I always move back towards the sexual victims because that's the area that I work with primarily, domestic violence and sexual assault. That there's like a pathway to becoming trafficked. And it's not the way you think, right? It's not stranger danger. Stranger danger, kidnapping is actually one of the fewest ways that someone becomes trafficked. The most common ways, believe it or not, are within a family system. And this is what I'm talking about, it being in your backyard. It's not your backyard, it's the neighbor's house next door. So if you see a lot of men coming and going, and I hate to say it men, because primarily the people that are purchasing children for sex are men. And they are men that look just like you and just like every other man out there. They're normal looking, right? It's not like they wear a sign on their forehead. That's the problem, right? They look normal and they get away with it. And not the same with the people that are actually doing the trafficking, the ones that are arranging this, and finding traffic people to traffic can be anybody. They can be police officers, they can be school teachers, and I hate to say things like that. Your next door neighbor, people that work with kids. It happens in churches. It happens anywhere where kids are is where traffickers, the people looking for children, are. They don't just pull them out of the air and they don't kidnap them. That's one of the fewest ways. They do it through internet and through um, knowing. Almost all traffickers know their trafficker. The victim knows the person that's trafficking them. And they've somehow established a relationship of trust with them. And a trafficker is a perpetrator. They're a predator. They're looking for vulnerable children. They're looking for a kid that doesn't have anyone to talk to, someone that sits alone in the cafeteria, someone that walks home alone or sits by themselves or is teased by the other kids. All of those things literally highlight to a trafficker or predator who to pick, because no one's paying attention to that kid in a positive way. So a trafficker goes up and builds a friendly relationship with them, right?
Right.
I'll listen to you, I'll feed you, I'll pay attention to you. And whether it happens online or in a schoolyard, they're finding that a lot of the traffickers have a connection to school systems. That's what they were finding in Texas. So they're trying to do a lot of training with school systems to make the school system aware of what a trafficker looks like and how they're finding kids. But the way and this was shocking, I will admit it was shocking to me, that families, mothers and fathers, are trafficking their own children.
Wow.
They're grooming them to be for sexual commodity. They're grooming them for sex. from
What
a very, 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 very infant young age.
what are the what are the numbers on that? Gosh, because you know, any number's too high for that. Um, you almost want to require them to have a license to have a kid at that point. Um, yeah, you know what I mean.
But
Um,
it's not, again, you wouldn't know it by looking at the parent because they're groomers. They groom you to recognize that they're okay, to welcome them into your community and welcome into your church or your school. He's okay. He's a good person. And then we think, I can't be wrong. That person can't be doing that sort of thing. That can't be happening in my neighborhood, at my school, my church, my club.
well,
That's why it's hard.
and that if you think about it in that context, you've got a real situation because you've got somebody who you could know who's doing that to their child. You've got, and I don't dare want to label teachers with this, but you could have teachers doing the same thing. You at any level, you could have coaches doing that same thing. You could have other family members doing that same thing. And I want to say that once you're kind of in, it's sort of like any government system that I've got to believe that once you're kind of in the know that you're in that scenario, you become even more susceptible and even uh, uh, bigger and worse things are down the road for you um, because of the scenarios that play out. But go ahead.
The lifespan of a child that has been trafficked is 17 or 18 years old.
Wow.
They don't make it.
That's
Either they kill themselves or they die of drug addictions or illness or will themselves to end their
you know
lives.
that yeah, we've talked about this before. We've got the movies out there now that give a true depiction of movies. um, and I say that with a chuckle at the same time that it's raising awareness of this scenario. But there truly is not um, one person out there who can conquer human trafficking at the levels that we're talking. It does take a unit of people, and locally we have that, and other cities have the same thing, um, and I you've got great relationships within law enforcement support side, and how would you connect the and we do this with the rape and prevention and the sexual side, but how does that work with the human trafficking connection? Because we really have never highlighted how law enforcement works with you guys on that side of it.
Well, it's similar because it's sex, sexual violence, sexual assault. In that, for example, somebody shows up in the hospital. Now, remember, historically, a child under the age of 18, if they would be arrested for prostitution, not human. See, this is a different conversation, right? Before, a child that was committing sexual acts for pay, they had a trafficker, but we didn't use that language, was actually the child was arrested for prostitution, and oftentimes the illegal act was the selling of sex, not the buying of sex. We didn't really make it illegal to buy sex,
Right.
only to sell it, right? So the people that were buying the sex, whether it's a child or an adult, they would be shuffled out the door. There wasn't a lot of criminal charges pressed against the people that are buying sex. So this isn't going to change until we make it illegal to buy sex. So, and hold the person purchasing, because this is a supply and demand, just like drugs. Increase the supply, increase the demand, you increase the supply. If there wasn't a demand for it, we wouldn't be having the conversation, right? If somebody
Yep.
wasn't buying sex for from children, then we
So,
wouldn't be having this conversation.
so we have a quick question. Can you read that on your screen?
Hold on.
All right. So I'm curious to know if they actually know how the trade works and with local associations, not just with these mob and cartel style kidnappings or nappings.
I'm not sure who they are. Who is they? How is the sex trade works with local
I,
associations?
I'm assuming that that's what she's talking about. Do they understand, and do people locally understand that? And
So
I think the answer probably is no on the local side. Human trafficking, human
yeah,
traffickers.
okay. So I I'm going to say this. The the training we need to train officers. We need to train law enforcement on how to deal with domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking, because the law enforcement looks at it from the perspective of crime. Can it be? Is it possible to charge them with the crime and prosecute them? So if they can't prosecute them, then it's really hard to move forward in a criminal investigation, right? So if a
Right.
child doesn't recognize that they are being trafficked, and you're talking about mob and cartel style kidnapping. We're not talking about mob and cartel style kidnapping.
Correct.
We're talking about, somebody who has a house down the street in a neighborhood, a nice neighbor, any kind of neighborhood. They were in Cape Coral. There was a couple places in Cape Coral that were used, what we call them brothels, but they were used as for sex trafficking. It was just it was a house with lots of bedrooms. So
Well,
training, we have to keep training law enforcement. The more we investigate, the more we know. And it's not law enforcement that's actually doing all this research. It's these nonprofit organizations, like the one that's gosh, I forgot what it's called, Hope Alliance for Hope. It's doing all this investigation. They're looking at criminals and working backwards, and they found strangulation was by their research, not law enforcement specific research, but nonprofits doing the research, and keep asking the question: how is this happening? Who's doing it? What's going on? How can we recognize it, and how can we predict it?
well, moreover's
So,
question, I think, draws into the 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 fact that in the media, there's one side of the conversation where we're talking about the border, we're talking about the cartels, we're talking about all these things at that level, the Epsteins of the world. We're talking about all those collectively on how they manage themselves. But there's that extreme, which we have, and then there's the local, and it's learning both facets of it. She's got another quick question here. So,
so that
uh,
so that's interesting that you talk about that, because they're the same. We make it big, right? When it's a Jeff Epstein situation, or a prince or a politician, and they try very hard to keep that covered up. But those are big name people, and that's what brings awareness to the issue. What's the problem is the small named people, the people that don't really are not public figures, that are buying, they're involved in this sex trade. The people that
well,
are invisible, nondescript, visible or invisible in plain sight.
and she's got another question. And I'll let you read this one because I think you're going to dive right in and go with this too. But I've got it on the screen for you.
Okay, so this is a really good. So we work with C.A.R.E, by the way, works with slow learning disabilities. We work specifically with adults with disabilities. We do prevention talks. So the question you're asking us is, for those who are on the radio, how do we increase the awareness to the conducts against slow learning disabilities? I'm assuming children and adults that have slow learning disabilities, or addicts who want out but get catered to, both to manipulate them away from their families and children, or even initiate their children into such illegal activities. So the what they found out was, which is really interesting, they found out that if a child or slow learning disabled adult, and children who become addicts, right? They found out that if a child, even if they're in a bad family, domestic, dysfunctional family, if they have one adult that listens to them, that is trustworthy, because the traffickers listen to them, right? Because that's how they manipulate them. They provide them with the things that they need that they're not getting at home or at school, or basic human needs is to be loved, or to be known, or to be visible. So if we can listen to children, hear what they're saying, not tell them what to do or say, listen to what's happening to them, what is happening to them, they are far less likely to get involved and to be manipulated. It's the children that do not have an adult in their life that listens to them, pays attention to them, and asks them what's going on. Those are the ones that get lost or taken and manipulated.
And this is an important follow-up to what she asked. She said, "Sorry, I've lost two children's mothers who wanted out but continued to be manipulated by these gangs to continue."
To
And
continue. Yeah,
yeah,
so there's something called a trauma bond, which keeps them. You said, I've lost two children's mothers. So the gangs, by the way, that's another thing. The gangs aren't selling drugs, they're selling sex, right? They're getting you addicted. So they're creating addictions. They're actually creating traumatic post-traumatic stress disorder. They're actually creating that so that people will disassociate and not remember or realize even what they're doing. So that's another really interesting thing. So the mothers may be doing it, they want out, but the gang may in fact have said, I will kill your child. So you will either continue, or I will kill your child, or I will go after your child and I will get your child to be doing the same thing. So the
and
mothers may have gone back to protect their children. They may have gone back because it's all that they know. It's like a dance, it's the only dance they know. And learning a new dance is too hard. And the world does not fare well or help addicts and or people with mental illness or post-traumatic stress disorder very well. They don't fit into society very well. There are outcasts, right? There are lepers, in a sense.
well, and
But
I
it's
want to
terrible, and I
follow.
want to say to moreover Evers Way, I'm really, really sorry. I'm really sorry that you've lost two mothers
Yep.
who wanted out but continued to be manipulated. I'm very sorry. And I know you work really hard at this. And don't give up.
So how can I get my kids away from it?
Listen to them. Do not judge them. Accept what is happening to them. Be present for them. Be present in the now. Put your phone down. Stop watching TV. Don't work so hard. Don't make every excuse. And I'm just wanting to say, not that you're doing that, but so often we don't even look at kids in the face when they're talking to us. We're doing the laundry. I'm a mom. I did it. Giving them a safe place to be, to tell you the truth without judgment, without your judgment. And believe them. The words, I believe you. I
I
believe you.
and the other thing, moreover, are you local? Because if you're local, it would I think it'd be interesting to one see what you thought of the symposium and the information that came out of it. Um, and truly join us at the symposium, because this is truly one of the fact that you're typing all this and you're coming forward and you're being very forthright, very brave of you to do that.
Yes.
And the fact that you're willing to engage on Manatee County. Well, it's a short drive, honey. That's one thing for sure. But there's some good organizations. Do you know organizations up in the Manatee area that she could get a hold of for the human trafficking side?
Um, just I don't have any of that information right here in front of me,
I'll
but
do some
just calling.
look. So she did have another question.
Oh,
These gangs have manipulated the entire judicial system, in which took my kids. Um, I don't see how. I don't see how. Thanks for the condolences.
um, boy, that's a tough one. And yes, exactly. I agree with you. Moreover, if that's what you're seeing, because we believe that the police aren't involved, and I'm not saying the police in Manatee. I totally believe what you're saying. Um, and yeah, because they find that the police officers are doing it as well. They're involved. They're protecting each other. That's part of their code of conduct, right? Their code ethics. And at the same time, we cannot let them get away with it. We have to call law enforcement out if they're involved. And that's a really tough thing to do.
And the judicial side of things, that's just it's one of those vices again, for people who are get into the system. It is very difficult, and that's really what we were just getting ready to jump into in the conversation. And it's ironic that kind of all these things have layered into moreover's conversation. But the fact that you have the judicial system involved, you've got a gang related scenario involved, you've got people pulling at both sides, and there's good manipulation and bad manipulation on both sides, I imagine, because once you kind of get into the system, it's not an easy thing to get out of. um, and I don't know that I would have any advice, but is there any advice that you would give to moreover on seeking more help?
Contacting your local. Yes, I understand what you're saying. Moreover, the court's not the local police, but that they protect each other. Well, the court systems, the legal systems, um, and I don't know I don't know your county at all, and so I can't make a judgment about those particular people. Um, it's really, 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 really difficult. Somebody needs to look into the court system and what's going on there in a much deeper level to see what's happening. It's also very dangerous.
It is, and
Very dangerous
I was looking here
for
online.
everyone involved. This is serious business, and this is serious money, and that's the whole point. This is big money. Human trafficking is is bigger than, or it's at least it's as big as drug trafficking, selling drugs, and it's easier. That's the interesting thing. It's easier.
I was
And that's
trying to
why this is just exploded. What?
I was trying to find some more. They've got an organization called Patch. Um,
I
I was
just
trying to.
if I can say a couple of things. I wanted to talk
Sure, go
about
ahead.
how people get trafficked, right? How it's called a pathway to the life of being trafficked. First of all, through families. believe it or not, we talked about this earlier, so I'm just starting with it because it's the most prominent one, is that families, caregivers, family members, that's what they do. They sell their children. And this has been something that's been part of culture for eons. This is not new news. But we're now saying it's wrong and illegal in the United States. The other thing that I see a lot more of, and that we see in our field, is this we call it the Romeo exploitation. So the girl, she's just starting in puberty, and she's starting to notice boys, and she wants to be liked, and we have all the Disney princess stories. She's looking for her Prince Charming, and she gets seduced by a boyfriend. I mean, I can't tell you how many cases I've already seen in this. She's 12 or 13 years old, 14. He's 18. He might even say he's 16. He's 18 or 20. I love you. I want to be your boyfriend. And they get them involved in doing different, simple sex acts, then more complicated sex acts. They get them involved in doing drugs. My light went off. There we go. That's my energy saving device that I have no control over. So they exploit them by saying things like, "I want to be your boyfriend, and if you love me, you will do what I ask you to do." So pretty soon they're getting them to have sex acts with their friends, and then charging a fee. The girl doesn't know that oftentimes, and she may be asked to do it, leave school, go on lunch break, and come back, get a doctor's appointment, leave, go commit have a sex act, trafficked, and then go back to school. It doesn't take a lot of time, right? In a lot of these cases, it's not like they need hours.
Right.
It doesn't take a lot of time. They can do it on a lunch break. So the girls are being seduced. It's called the Romeo exploitation, Romeo and Juliet. So a boyfriend or a girlfriend is getting them to do it, take pictures of themselves, take drugs, gets them addicted to drugs. And then once they're addicted to drugs, you basically they're on a leash, almost like they're on a leash, and they'll do whatever they have to do for the drug. And I've seen this quite a bit. Also, I'm noticing, I just want to go back to the family. When I've been working with adults of addiction, I started asking them, when did they start using drugs and how did they start using drugs or alcohol? They started when they were 10. They were addicted. They were alcoholics by the time they were 12 or 13 years old, and then moved on to drugs. I said, who gave it to you? My parents did. Or, they were having a party, so everybody's drinking, so I did too. Or parents gave them drugs, family members, to keep them quiet,
Right.
to sedate them. Okay. So you get someone addicted and they will just do anything for that addiction. Okay. The other one is called guerrilla exploitation. You will do it or I will kill you. You will do what I say, or I will kill your sister, your dog, your brother, your family member, your best friend. Then, so you've got, like, let's say you've got a girl who's gotten involved, the Romeo, her boyfriend, she's now having to have all these different sex acts with his paid people. And she's like, I don't want to do this anymore. And he said, all right, instead of you doing it, you recruit somebody, you go find somebody to do it, and you won't have to do it anymore. And you'll just be my girlfriend. So now you have boys and girls in school, in high school, recruiting other kids for sex trafficking. So kids are recruiting kids, and that's called peer-to-peer recruitment. And the other one is gang recruitment, which is what I was trying to eventually get to with, moreover, with our Facebook person. These gangs, they get someone into a gang. Again, why a gang? Because kids are looking for family. The families aren't family units, right? There might be sexual assault, domestic violence in the family. They may be being abused. So they go look for somebody else who will keep them safe, who will protect them. So they get involved with gangs. poor parenting. And, all of a sudden they find an older kid who's the gang leader or a member of the gang. They get them involved. Well, if you want to be in our gang, you have to commit certain acts. And now they're making huge amounts of money on sex, selling their gang members for sex. The other one we have to really, 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 really pay attention to, parents, is the internet. These games, your kids are playing all these games. Parents, I have to admit, like, I don't even know what's going on anymore. Right? I don't even know what my kids are grown. So I got little baby grandkids. How many kids do we now have on the computer, on our iPads? We're not even paying any attention to what they're looking at. It's just keeping them entertained while they're in the car, or while you're doing your work or whatever. And we're not even looking to see what they're seeing. And that's how they're getting them, through the internet. Social media, chat rooms. Who are they talking to? We don't even know. They could be halfway around the world. And they're saying that they're, some 15-year-old kid that wants to date your 13-year-old daughter, and please send pictures. We've actually had, in this case, maybe because it's more popular. Yes, of course. TikTok. TikTok's another way. And again, I'm out of the loop. I don't even know how this happens. But yeah, any kind of internet, TikTok, wanting to be popular.
You're naming, like, she's getting into and out of the Facebook realm. The Facebook realm is old school for us now who are older adults. We've got our social media side. The young kids now have TikTok and other organizations that are out there that are more in tune to targeting the teenager and below to get them engaged, and that's their target.
Right.
So if you're not paying attention to what your kids are on, and that's where we'll really come back and bite you. I've only got 1 minute left. I've got to get off the air on time today, but moreover, I really appreciate you being part of this.
Thank you.
Yes, Omingle has become the biggest, and there'll be another one that takes over without question. This is John Rawlings with WKDW Radio 97.5 FM saying thanks for listening in. Moreover, thank you for being part of the show. John, thank you so much for being part of the show, and we will talk to you guys next month when I'll have Joan back on. But hopefully you guys can come down and see us at the symposium. I will try to do some quick overviews and some quick lives down there while I'm emceeing. I may just run the camera the whole time. We'll never know. But I'll talk to you guys soon. And moreover, if you want me to run the camera the whole time at the symposium, let me know, and I will try to give you that feed. 941-391-4663 is my cell. But thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Joan.